As shooters, we're always trying to improve our skill set. There's basically only two things you need to be able to do in terms of rounds on target, and that's speed and accuracy. If you drill shooting down to its brass tacks, it's speed and accuracy. The third important factor would be mobility. Speed, accuracy, mobility. You got to move in a three-dimensional world in a dynamic environment. And then if you wanted to add, the fourth one would be communication. So if you're in a group dynamic, you need speed, you need accuracy, you need to be able to move effectively and communicate. But as shooters on the range, typically what we're focusing on is speed and accuracy, and there's this eternal, battle between these two things, or at least we as firearms instructors sort of purport there to be this eternal struggle between speed and accuracy, and on a fundamental level they are opposing forces. You're never going to be as accurate as you want to be on any kind of drill, because for you to be as accurate as you possibly can be, it will take you slowing down some of the movements to really focus. Focus takes time. It takes focus to be really accurate at long ranges and on small targets typically. So there is that struggle there, and you'll never be as fast as you want to be, because if you push yourself as physically fast as you can go, you won't maintain the accuracy typically you need in a drill, be it a real world drill, if you will, or just a practice drill, be it competition, be it just shooting on the range with your buddies or whatever. So there is a fundamental struggle between speed and accuracy, but I think we overstate it sometimes, and this is coming from a firearms instructor. I think we as instructors overstate that. And really, and I've got a very long video all about how to pull a trigger when accuracy is the most important goal. And here's how typically it works when you're going through firearms instruction. The instructor will say, look, speed and accuracy, there's these opposite forces, so if we're going to focus on accuracy, we're going to have to accept the fact that speed's going to be a little lower. And what we're talking about there is trigger pull. That's ultimately what we expect you to slow down to really hone in your accuracy. Squeeze the trigger slow and smooth as you can. Let the gun surprise you. Clean break. Why? Why are we doing that? Because the faster you move your hand, for two reasons. The faster you move the muscles in your hands, the more likely it is that those movements cause small angular deviations from your point of sight picture and sight alignment, your aim point. So small deviations at an angle turn into big deviations on the target. That's one reason. And two, it's a psychological thing. You're born with two fears. You're afraid of loud noises, and you're afraid of things flying towards your body, i.e. falling. And a gunshot does both things. It makes a loud noise, and the recoil moves an object towards your face. So you have a tendency naturally to react to that, to flinch and push against that recoil when it starts happening. Audibly, you get that sound, you hear it coming, and then you start feeling it move towards you. And in your DNA is programmed a reaction to push against that. And so those two things are why we tell students, squeeze the trigger slow and smooth, let the gun surprise you, so that you're not making angular deviations with the mechanical movements in your hand and the rest of your body, and you're not psychologically reacting to the sound and movement of the recoil and adding impulsive deviations by flinching in response to those stimulus. So, and all that is true on a fundamental level. But what I think we do, and I'm including myself in this a lot of times, is we teach you how to be all super accurate and tell you if you can't put a whole magazine in a 1-inch by 1-inch target at 3 yards, then don't even try to shoot fast yet, because you need that foundation to add speed to. But then when we get into the speed part, we then just say, try to be smooth with it. You're obviously going to have to, if you're going to shoot, sub-quarter second splits, you're going to have to know exactly when you're pulling the trigger, i.e. jerk it. You're going to have to pull the trigger, and we don't like to use the jerk word, but it's the truth. You've got to learn how to jerk the trigger, to pull the trigger as quickly as you can, to be able to do that. And we don't really go into that. And the truth is, if you could pull the trigger almost as fast as you physically could and not put that psychological impulse to push against the recoil, and not add all this angular deviation with your muscle movements, then unless we're talking hyper accurate, we need hyper accuracy, then why would you ever pull the trigger slow? If you could train yourself to jerk the trigger and not miss, why would you not pull the trigger fast? Because ultimately, if we're talking about defensive shooting and combat shooting, you're going to spend far more time in the real world shooting as fast as you can to get shots on target quickly to stop a threat than you will take that hostage shot with a pistol from 50 yards away. So we spend all this time on these core fundamentals of sight picture, sight alignment, and slow, smooth trigger pull, and then we just tell, all right, now we got to shoot quickly too, so just do everything we told you to do, but do it really fast and try not to add that impulse. And that's really a failure as an instructor, because you aren't just doing the same things you were doing to shoot accurately and speeding them up, specifically trigger pull. You're still not wanting to add deviations, angular deviations with your mechanics, and you're not wanting to flinch, but you don't just say, now speed it up and don't do those things. We went slow because that was the beginning of not doing those things, but it doesn't have to be the end. A lot of students think whenever an instructor gets up here and shoots, 2 or 3 rounds in a 1 second flat time frame from a holster, they think that somehow your reaction time or your physical ability to move faster is better than theirs. It really just isn't. I'm parroting a lot of stuff that Rob Latham has in a video that he posted on YouTube, and he actually showed his reaction time. He basically took the slack out of the trigger. I don't know what he was using an XD, and normally I'd be an XD, but I got a stock Glock 17 because my XD's getting slide cuts done. Videos to come. But he basically pulls the slack out of the trigger, gets the striker right at the wall, and whenever the shot timer goes off, he pulls the trigger as fast as he can, and he stays between the 0.14 and 0.20 reaction time, basically just showing that his reaction time isn't any better than the average person's, really. It's not about that. The secret thing that he's been able to be good at, and frankly, guys like me who can shoot quickly in a tight group, we've learned to pull the trigger, to jerk the trigger, frankly, without angular deviations and without flinching on the recoil for the most part. And it's something that we almost pick up through osmosis, through trigger time. You learn it over time, being able to, you're basically dumbing yourself down or dumbing your reactions down where you don't have this instinctive reaction to flinch. And then you just learn to only add movement that you have to add. You only pull the trigger far enough to break it, only reset it far enough for it to reset the striker. And in doing those things, I remove a lot of those physical angular deviations. But I think there's something you can do to help you be a speed shooter on a regular range, which a lot of things you can't do, just like shoot from the holster and shoot rapidly. But something you can do is purposely jerk the trigger. Teach yourself to purposely jerk the trigger without missing. And it's going to take repetition to where you train that instinctive reaction to flinch against the recoil and to add mechanical movement that's not necessary to over-pull and over-reset the trigger. I think that's a valuable thing for you to practice. Just to prove to you that it's not like some superhuman reaction time that allows shooters to shoot quickly, I'm going to do the same thing that Rob Latham did. And once again, he is a world-class shooter, has forgotten more about shooting than I'll ever know, and he was between the 0.14 and 0.20 in his reaction time. So I'm going to do the same thing, stock Glock. I'm going to take all the slack out of the trigger. I got a target at 3 yards. I'm just going to put it high center mass and jerk the trigger from a staged trigger. In other words, I'm taking the slack out. When the shot timer on a random start beeps, I'm going to jerk the trigger and just over 3 or 4 rounds see what my reaction time is, just to prove to you, one, I don't have some superhuman reaction time, and neither does a world-class shooter like Rob Latham. Okay, so shot clock on a random start. I will sight picture alignment, high center mass, stage the trigger right before the striker drops. When it beeps, pull the trigger. .16. 0.15. 0.16. 0.14. 0.13. Okay. So a handful of shots. Last one was a 0.13. I don't even know if that's focusing on there. And just for transparency's sake, let me review that. 1.3, 1.4, 1.6, 1.5, 1.6. So, no superhuman reaction time for me. No superhuman reaction time for Rob Latham. And if I pull this target back from 3 yards, is that as accurate as I could shoot if I was really trying to shoot it? No, of course not. I could stack a whole magazine in a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch target paste at that distance. And this is probably a 1.5 inch, tall, 2 inch tall by 1 inch wide group of 5 rounds. But it is as accurate as you would ever need to be at that distance, especially in the real world. Those could all be between the eye headshots, jerking the trigger intentionally. And we know I'm jerking the trigger intentionally because the shot clock said I was. If I had been doing slow, steady squeezes, we would have seen that in the reaction time. So I could run that same group out all the way to 25 yards and still be in this FBIQ target, which tells me I can hit by my eliminating mechanical angular deviations in my hand from jerking the trigger, and by eliminating flinching against the recoil, I should be able, this should extrapolate out to run this all the way to 25 yards and do the same trigger pull and never miss the FBIQ. Now, they may not all be high center mass, but they would be pretty good. The point I'm trying to make is, yes, there is a time and a place to, when you're learning, to squeeze the trigger slow and smooth and teach yourself. That's how you know that you're aiming. To me, it's quicker to learn how to squeeze slow and smooth. If you just force yourself not to know when the trigger goes off, it's a good way to test whether or not you're getting sight picture and alignment, because it's the easiest way, in my opinion, to learn how not to put angular deviation and flinches to the recoil by squeezing it slow and smooth. If you can just understand the concept, which I think is fairly simple, I'm going to squeeze this trigger and I'm going to just keep adding pressure till it goes bang, and I'll have no idea when that's going to happen. And with that kind of shot, I can then test if my sight picture and sight alignment's right, because I know I didn't add any angular deviation or flinches to the recoil because the gun surprised me. So now I know that the gun went off where I thought I was aiming, and I can check that. But you need to move past that. If you ever want to be somebody who is going to be able to go bang, 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 and shoot in a tempo, shoot rhythmically, and still maintain a combat effective group, you've got to be able to do that by making the trigger go bang now. Now. It's a tempo. Bang, 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 bang. Some of you have probably watched when I was talking about rhythmic shooting on my channel. There's no way to do that without knowing when the trigger is going to break. And you only know when it's going to break by making it break. Jerking the trigger. So yes, I am telling you, for combat shooting, you have to learn to jerk the trigger. And if you can get that kind of group at 3 yards, jerking a stock Glock 17 trigger on a brand new gun, then really in the real world, you'll probably never need to be more accurate than that. Unless we're talking headshots at, 7, 15, 25, whatever yards. And then you get to a point where you're talking, is this even ever, what's the statistical likelihood that I'm taking a headshot with a handgun at 25 yards? Probably daggum near 0, even a law enforcement capacity. Point being, it's something that you should probably add to your training regimen. You need to, I think you will get there faster. There being a better mastery of balancing speed and accuracy to find the sweet spot for your distance and target size, I think you will get there faster if you will intentionally train yourself to jerk the trigger without moving angular mechanical deviations and flinching for the recoil than you would if you just do it through pure repetition, where you you dumb that reaction down, you desensitize yourself to those things, and then over repetition learn just to break and reset the trigger more effectively, more efficiently, which is going to accidentally, to some degree, get rid of a lot of those mechanical deviations because you're not over pulling and over resetting the trigger. So you can do this drill at any indoor range I've ever been to because you're jerking the trigger, but you're not shooting rapidly. And I think if you can teach yourself to do that consistently, jerking the trigger, then you'll be able to start stringing those up with quick splits between them and not start jerking for the first shot or the last shot or the middle shot in that string of fire. To be able to go bang, 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 in theory, as long as you're allowing the recoil to settle and you're controlling how far that travel is with a good isosceles stance and a good two-hand thumbs forward grip, then you should be able to shoot a similar group size. It's not going to be as tight because the gun is moving in your hand, and you're going to sacrifice some accuracy just to, not wait for that gun to be absolutely motionless like it was when these were breaking, but you get a similar size group shooting a quicker repetition. And we can even try that. I'll put it right back out to 3 yards. Set a shot clock, and I think that was 5 rounds, something like that, 5 rounds maybe. So I'll shoot a 5-round group quickly, starting in the same manner, but just stringing those shots together and just see what the group size looks like. You've seen what the group looks like, so we'll see if it grows. Two of those 5 rounds are a little higher, and that's just me catching the gun before the recoil is completely settled. But 3 of them are indistinguishable from the beginning group, and that was 5 rounds in 1.11 seconds, okay? So obviously not squeezing the trigger slow. Splits are in the, 0.15 range, 0.17 range, fluctuating. Just proving a point that a comparable group size, stringing that same jerk together 5 times. Once you can get the jerk consistently 1 shot at a time, it's pretty easy to string them together. As soon as that goes off, you're resetting the trigger and jerking it again, and you don't start going jerk, 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 jerking, flinching. People say, don't jerk the trigger. What they should be saying is, don't flinch when you jerk the trigger if you're shooting quickly. People say, don't jerk the trigger. What they should be saying is, don't add mechanical angular deviations with your hand, gripping the gun goofy, and slamming the trigger and resetting the trigger goofy, instead of saying, don't jerk the trigger when you're shooting quickly. I'm not advocating for hostage headshots on a person with a hostage at 7 yards with a trigger jerk. If I was in that situation to drop a hostage taker with a forehead shot at 7 yards, I'm still going to get a smooth, clean break on the trigger as long as I feel like the situation's giving me time for that. But if I start seeing a hammer come back, it's nice to know that I don't have to finish that clean, smooth break. I can just end it right now without the mechanical angular deviations and flinching to the recoil. Do yourself a favor and practice that instead of just waiting for it to happen through pure repetition. Good to go? Bye.